Okay, welcome to the first Lions of the Law Legacy interview featuring Patrick Neale. Pat has been described as a masterful problem solver and a leader among leaders. So Pat, could you give us a quick 30-second blurb of who you are and what it is that you do?
Well, I'm obviously a lawyer. Been here in Collier County since 1987. Most of my practice is in business law, but I also special magistrate and teach at FGCU and a few other things. But really, I try one of my focus and my sort of philosophy is to try and resolve issues and work with people to try and resolve them. And I've always enjoyed doing that. I'm a conciliator, mediator more than I am an advocate. I'm still an advocate for my client, but I really find that it's something that for most people it's better to have a resolution than it is to have a battle. And as far as leading, I've always enjoyed being involved in organizations, and somehow I guess I'm probably the noisiest one on the board because I often get selected to be the leader of the organization. So I'm not sure how that happens, but yeah, I've enjoyed that.
Okay, well, part of this project is to preserve the legacy of the Collier County Bar Association and to talk to lawyers who've been here in the community for a number of years and have made a significant impact on the legal community. So it's very appropriate that you're up for the Lions of the Law this year, and we're all very proud of you and excited to honor you at the second DCA dinner, or sixth DCA dinner this year. I gotta
one of these days we'll remember it.
I gotta retrain my thought process. So let's start at the beginning. What first inspired you to become a lawyer?
Well, my path to becoming a lawyer was really sort of accidental. I was in undergraduate at the University of Miami, and my undergraduate major was chemistry. And you who have been on the UM campus know that the Cox Science Building is here, the law school is there, and the student union with the cafeteria is there. And so I had to walk through the law school to get to the cafeteria, and I was getting ready to graduate, and I already had a job, and was looking around to basically try and defer my student loans as much as anything. University of Miami had a night law program, so I got in and enrolled and found it interesting, and so that's how I sort of stumbled into the law, but I'm certainly glad I did.
Now, how did you stumble into Naples after going to law school in Miami?
Well, after I graduated from law school in '78, I moved to Connecticut to work for a company. I was involved in a different industry at that point in time, and lived in Connecticut. Then I moved from Connecticut to Houston. Then I moved from Houston to Philadelphia. And I was in Philadelphia one October, and it was cold and rainy and ugly, and I was having to scrape ice off of my windshield. And my law school roommate, one of my best friends, Joe Mansilla, was the general counsel for Deltona Corporation. And Deltona, of course, was developer of Marco Island. And he said, we need a lawyer down here in Marco Island to represent Deltona. Would you be interested? And at that point in time, I said, you betcha, because I don't want to have to scrape my windshield anymore. So that's how I ended up in Collier County in Naples, back in Marco Island at that point, 1987. So I moved back here in '87.
That's a good segue. So in 1987, in your early years of practice here in Collier County, what was the bar like?
It was a very, very small group of people back then. Everybody knew everybody. And if a new lawyer moved to town, everybody went, who's that? Who's that? Who is that person? Whereas now a new lawyer moves down and goes, here's another one. But it was really a very collegial group of people. I was down on Marco at the time, so Marco almost had its own bar association. We were so far away that we, with the lawyers down there, hung out with each other. But still, I spent a lot of time up here in Naples, and it was a very collegial group. It was the kind of bar and practice that really, I think every bar should look as a goal to be like the Collier County Bar was and even is today.
Is there something about the Collier County Bar itself that stands out to you that you say is a pillar for other legal communities to follow?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we have here in Naples that you don't see in a lot of other places, and any of us who've practiced elsewhere in the state or had to deal with people in the other state, is our bar here is really generally very professional, very knowledgeable about what they're doing, and very, very civil in that you don't get a lot of the screaming all caps emails and people yelling at each other on the phone and such here in Collier County that you see if you deal with people from elsewhere in the state.
Now, other than Deltona, do you remember your first client or case that you worked on, and was there something about that experience that made it stand out to you?
Yeah, it was probably when I was one of my first clients was one of the large hotels on Marco, and so I was representing them, and it sort of guided me into sort of an area that I spend a lot of time in, which is hospitality law. And that's what I teach. One of the things I teach at FGCU is hospitality law. And so that sort of guided me to that. And it also taught me a lot about the intricacies of franchise agreements and things like that. Plus, I made some good friends in the management there that I still have to this day.
Interesting. Were there any mentors in the community that shaped your legal career?
Yeah, there's a couple of people, three people really that I think of that are both in the community and not, that really shaped me. The first one really is a fellow named Joe Mansilla. Joe was my law school roommate and was the general counsel for Deltona. And Joe was really the one who, when I moved back down here and really started practicing law, because I hadn't really when I was working in other industries, sort of helped me get into how to practice law and introduced me around to a lot of people and such. The other one is Yale Freeman. Yale is a dear friend. I've known Yale since I was in law school, so that shows you it's been a long time. And you know, he obviously looks younger than I do, but that's just that's his good fortune. And then of course
he'll get a kick out of that.
Yeah, Yale will enjoy that. And then the other one is really Ed Sheffy. Ed has always been somebody that if I had a question, particularly one that went to the core of what it means to be a lawyer, Ed was somebody that I always felt very comfortable in picking up the phone and saying, "Hey, Ed, I got this issue. What do you think?" And he was always very free and open with advice and counsel. And you know, I think that's between him and Yale particularly. They're the ones that even to this day I turn to.
That's excellent. Was there ever a moment that stands out to you as being an aha moment of, oh wow, this is why I became a lawyer?
There's several. I think basically a lot of the times that's been is when you see that smile on a client's face that all of a sudden what was nothing but a problem that was weighting them down terribly, and they thought everything about their life was coming to an end, and you show them a path to things getting better. And particularly I did a lot of work in bankruptcy and foreclosure defense and things like that back in those days. And you know, I remember how many times when I had a bankruptcy client coming in and they were, you know, just so burdened by debt and everything was grinding them down. You say, look, here we are. We're going to be able to file for this. You'll get a fresh start. All those things are behind you, and you'd see just this look of relief come over their face. And to me, those are always some of the most rewarding things, is when you give someone a path to a better life.
That's excellent. Okay, let's talk about the history of the Collier County Bar Association specifically. Are there any traditions or events that define the CCBA to you?
Well, aside from axe throwing, which unfortunately they've closed the axe throwing place.
You're going to have to explain that before you go on to the next thing.
Well, we did have at one point, a couple of years ago, there was an axe throwing place here in Naples. And we had a bar event where this probably wasn't our all-time best plan. We had a bar association dinner and meeting. And then after consuming at least some quantity of alcohol, then we decided to go and do axe throwing. Fortunately, as far as I can tell, no one had to call a personal injury attorney after that. So I think it worked out well, but that's probably an event that is not going to be repeated a whole lot of times. But no, there's a lot of traditions. I think the annual installation luncheon is a great tradition. I think the DCA dinner is a great tradition. Mm-hmm. I think those are the kinds of things that really bring the bar together and allow us to be people. But I think also the educational side of the bar, where you know the sections just do such a good job of putting educational material out there on a monthly basis, and it's really a very solid bar and really helps with becoming networking and getting to know the other people in the bar.
Now, other than size, have you seen the Collier County Bar evolve over time since you've been practicing here?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely has. It's become a more sophisticated bar. I think we're doing things better than we had in the past. We're certainly providing, I think we're giving more member services. I think we're doing more community service. So I think a lot of those things that the bar is doing is really making itself a real representative of the legal community. And we're not just a bunch of guys and gals getting together and having a drink together.
Now, are there any major initiatives that you can remember that the bar has undertook to make a lasting impact on the community?
Well, I think the major initiatives that the bar has taken is really the long-term support of legal aid and providing that service, and then as part of that, doing the pro bono aspects of legal aid. I also think the other thing that they've done is the Collier County Bar Lawyer Referral Service is probably the best one that I've ever dealt with, certainly the best one in the state of Florida, where they really do a great job of motivating lawyers to get on board and then providing people with the right lawyer at the right time. Their ability to analyze what a client really needs is, I think, exceptional. So I think the LRS is really a good program.
Now, if you could describe the CCBA in just a couple of words, would you have a couple of words to describe the CCBA?
Yeah, I think the first word that leaps to mind about the CCBA is it's collegial. Is you really have a group of people that seem to be focused on following the right direction. I think that's it. I think it's also it's very educational, and I think it can be motivational. But I think one of the big things that it really has done is provide support for lawyers. The support, as far as I'm concerned, from the mental health initiatives that the bar has undertaken, and the counseling for the members of the bar is one of the great initiatives the bar has ever done.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Okay, let's talk about your service and pro bono work. So you've been recognized for your service and pro bono work. Was there anything that drove you to do pro bono work when you first started?
Yeah, I mean, pro bono work and community volunteering, volunteer issues, is really, I feel that those of us who are lawyers or, anybody who has a profession that is making a decent living and able to do things, you really have a duty to give back to your community. We're all exceptionally fortunate to be in the position we're in. And there's an awful lot of people in this community that aren't so fortunate and that really could use the assistance of someone that is educated, that has a knowledge of the law, but also is able to give their time to providing services to the people who need it here. Because we all remember that those of us that are on this side of Collier County, close to the beach, we all think everything is wonderful and everybody drives a Bentley. Unfortunately, that's not the truth, and there's an awful lot of people here that, over 60% of the students in our schools are on free and reduced lunch. Those kinds of things where we have an obligation as members of the bar to provide as much as we can through volunteer service.
Is there a particular pro bono case or community service project that you work on that stands out in your mind?
There's a few, actually, that I think, at least in my experience, I found really, really exceptionally interesting. I've been on the board of Avow. We've managed to, as part of Avow, to expand our services and expand our service area. When I was with Youth Haven, we did a lot of expansion and new growth there. So there's been a number of things like that where we've been able to, when I was involved with the YMCA down on Marco, now still involved with the YMCA up here, but at that point we were able to construct a new building, a new facility. So there's a lot of those kind of projects that I can look at in my past that I've been involved in and go, that's really pretty neat that got done. So.
All right, that's excellent. Okay, so let's talk about some reflections and advice that you give to the legal community. First question, what advice would you give to a young lawyer who's just beginning their career?
Don't think you know everything. Number one, don't think you know everything, because you're going to come out of law school, and the one thing law school does not teach you is how to be a lawyer. Mm-hmm. It teaches you almost nothing about how to be a lawyer. And that's where I think don't come out of law school and become a member of the bar and think you know everything. And as part of that, then rely on people who have been in the practice for a period of time, whether it's 5 years or 50 years, but rely on those people to provide you information, knowledge, advice on how to be a lawyer. Not just the nuts and bolts and the technical pieces, but how you should conduct yourself with other members of the bar. I think that's the learning curve that I would really recommend. And then network. Get out there and know people, because we're a very collegial and open community, and I think getting out there and networking with the other members of the bar can be very, very valuable.
And anybody can give Ed Cheffy a call, and he'll pick up the phone and answer.
Well, I don't know about that. I'm not going to give out Ed's number, put it that way. But no, I think you find a lawyer that you like, that you respect, that you feel does a good job, and ask them questions. Take them to lunch.
Now, the legal field has changed since COVID, and now we're mediating by Zoom, we're arbitrating by Zoom, we're having hearings by Zoom. And a lot of attorneys don't have the opportunity to go to the courthouse anymore and watch good lawyers practice. Do you have any advice for those attorneys that may not have seen the inside of a courthouse on a regular basis and how they can get involved and learn more?
I think it's valuable, frankly, to take some of your time. I know billable hours for all of us are what hangs over our head incredibly. Except for your PI guys, you don't have to worry about that. But take some of those hours that you would be billing and go sit in the back of a courtroom. Look at a judge that you respect. Look at the docket for the day and see what the cases are that are on the docket. Are they cases that you might find interesting or that might be relevant to what you're doing? And then go sit in the back of the courtroom. And if the judge asks, just say, "I'm here observing." Most judges don't care at all if you're observing in their courtroom. And so go in and actually watch how the good guys practice. So, find out where the top lawyers in town, the top litigators in town are, and go sit with them. And I think that's important. I think for transactional attorneys too, it's important because we're not everybody's a litigator, but I think for transactional attorneys, it's very important to talk to people in your segment of the transactional community and say, how do I do this? What do you think? What's a better way to do this? How do I make it easier for you if I have a transaction with you? I think those are the kinds of things that could be helpful.
That's really good advice nowadays, especially.
And again, as you say, the distant nature of the way we're practicing, the virtual nature of a lot of our practice, I think has taken away from some of that. And that's where I think the getting out and networking and live in-person events is very helpful, because all of a sudden that person that all of you've seen is in a little box on a screen all of a sudden is now someone that you can shake hands with and actually talk to.
And thankfully our bar has a lot of networking events
Yes.
that we can do. There's
Yes,
a
we do.
rodeo that's coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Okay. So what qualities do you believe make a lawyer not just good, but great?
I think what really makes a great lawyer is curiosity, is always being curious. Never think that you have learned everything you can know about an area, because you never will. Be curious, and then be open. Be open to other people. Understand that not everybody is like you, and so accept people who aren't. And then also, I think it's important to be collegial, be convivial. Talk to people as human beings. Don't talk to them. Don't think that you've seen lawyers be very stilted and stiff. That's not necessarily the way. Be yourself and be out there, but really get out there.
Is there something that you know now that you wish that you had known at the start of your legal career?
Yeah, investment bankers make a lot more money. But no, I think really the thing that I didn't conceive of when I started in the practice was how important other lawyers are to your practice. Is that getting out there and getting to know other lawyers and getting to know how they think, and understanding that you don't know really what their struggle is. If somebody seems particularly nasty to you one day, it may not be because they're nasty. It may be because they have something that's really bothering them in their life. And don't just step on somebody because you think they deserve it.
That's good advice too. All right, let's shift to a little comedy. Every lawyer has a funny courtroom story. Do you
Yes.
have one?
My favorite courtroom story, and it's when I first really started practicing here in Collier County, and it goes back to the far distant old days when the courthouse and the sheriff's department were all in one small 2-story building, which I still refer to as the old courthouse, even though a lot of people refer to what I call the new courthouse as being the old courthouse. But I was in there, and it was a case that I had picked up from someone. One of the lessons I learned there was never take a case that's already had 3 lawyers on it. This one, I was number 4. And I walk into the courtroom as Judge Blackwell, and it was in one of his old courtroom, and it was sort of smelled musty. They all did. And I get up there, and I, stand, Your Honor. Well, I'm representing so-and-so. Say, make my motion and everything, and opposing counsel makes their response, and Judge Blackwell leans over the bench, as only Judge Blackwell could do, looks down on me, and goes, "Mr. Neale, in law, as in baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. Denied." And that sort of set me up to, okay, well, now I know what it feels like to get kicked in the teeth.
That's pretty funny. All right, what's the most unusual client request that you've ever received?
Aside from the ones that are purely illegal, which that has happened more than once in my career, really, I think, I've been asked to drive people to places. I've been asked to, could you keep an eye on my kid while I run back out to the car for something? Those kinds of requests are fairly common. I think, other than that, I haven't had many terribly bizarre requests. I did have one client who had been convicted of financial fraud who asked me to sign a good character affidavit for them.
That's always funny.
Yeah.
All right, so if Hollywood made a movie about your career, who would play you?
Joe Pesci.
Okay, and why is that?
Best lawyer I've ever seen in movies.
Okay.
And My Cousin Vinny is still my favorite law movie. It's probably the most accurate legal movie I've ever seen. So I want Joe Pesci to play me.
Can you still quote any lines from
You
My
bet.
Cousin Vinny?
Yeah, I gotta watch out for those Utes.
Utes guys.
Represent my Utes. Yeah.
All right, what's one thing people would be surprised to learn about you outside the area law?
Well, I think my sort of prior career, and the one that extended even after I had moved here, was my prior career was I was primarily in the international chemical and plastic distribution and trading business. And as a result of that, I ended up traveling a lot all over the world. And I've made, at least by my count, I've made about 40 trips to Russia and about 15 trips to China over the years. So I've spent a lot of time doing that. And, ended up learning a lot of interesting things about a lot of interesting countries. I've been around the world several times with that business, and so that was always an interesting business to be in. I think my law background helped in that business because there was a lot of contracts and things like that, and my background in that business helped me a lot in dealing with other companies.
So throughout your legal career, have you had any, do you do anything you like to blow off steam when you're not practicing law?
Yeah, as those who know me, and I think most of the people in the bar know this, is my wife and I are very much fans of fine wine and good food, and so we spend a fair amount of time going to wine dinners and wine tastings and buying wine and drinking good wine and eating good food. So that's probably our biggest relaxation point, which means I should probably get more exercise than I do.
Do you have any interesting hobbies?
Not really. My hobby is pretty much doing a lot of the things. A lot of the things that I do, I love to do. I love teaching at FGCU. That's one of the most enjoyable things I can do. Serving on nonprofit boards, it gives me a good feeling every time I do it. So those are really the things that I find to be, even though they're tasks and chores, they're things that I find to be ways I can relax by doing them.
All right. So when people look back on your career with the Collier County Bar Association, are there any particular things that you hope that they remember?
I just hope that they remember I was a good colleague, that I was somebody that they could reach out to, that I was ethical, and that I was just a good lawyer and a good person.
That's awesome. All right. So if you could leave one piece of wisdom or guiding principle for lawyers in the future, what would it be?
I think I go back to what I said before, is remain curious and care about people. Understand that, yes, money is important in the law, but at the end of the day, it's your client that's the most important thing. And that doesn't mean that you do anything unethical, untoward, or anything like that in representing your client, but you're there for that client, and they have put a sacred trust in you. And I think one of the things I first realized in practice was when that person looks at you and they're expecting you to be the font of all knowledge, make sure that you're doing it in your best possible way. And if you don't know something, tell your client you don't know and send them down the road. don't think you can learn everything in the law.
That's great advice. All right, so that about wraps us up today. So Pat, thank you so much for being here with us.
My pleasure.
We're really honored to have you as part of the Collier County Bar Association and the recipient of the Lions of the Law
Well,
Award this year.
I have to say, I couldn't be more honored to be recipient of the Lions of the Law. I looked at the past list, and I sort of look at it and go, how the heck did I get on that list?
Well,
So-
there's a reason for it, and a lot of it is what we spoke about today. And you can tell your love of the law and your passion for people and the community and the contributions that you give into the bar over the years. So we really do thank you, and we appreciate you, man.
Thank
And,
you.
We look forward
Thank
to a lot longer with you.
Well, be here as long as I can.
Sounds good. All right.
you.
Thank you all so much.
Right.